to smile. It's the wrong place. This is the better place. Get the center of the screen.
Hi, and welcome everybody to another webinar from the Center for Agricultural Profitability at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. My name is Ryan Evans. I'm the communications specialist with the center. And as always, you can find an updated schedule of upcoming webinars, as well as recordings of past webinars on our website at cap.unl.edu/webinars. And this recording should be up later today if you want to revisit it or share it with anyone who missed it. And for the last several years, UNL's Extension Beef Economics team has created a short document that forecasts the expected value of replacement heifers for Nebraska producers. The forecasts are intended to be used as a guide in what cow replacement costs might be, given market volatility, futures expectations, costs, and other factors. And they're intended to reflect what might happen over the life of purchased animals. The forecast is intended to help individuals create a reference point for their operations and expectations of potential future events, and arrive at what a reasonable value might be for a heifer or cow purchased or retained for replacement given their situation. So to present on the 2026 beef heifer replacement price forecast, we are glad to be joined again today by that Extension Beef Economics team. They are all located in North Platte, Nebraska at the West Central Research, Extension, and Education Center. I want to welcome Shannon Sand, an Extension Ag Economist, Matt Stockton, a professor and Ag Economist, and Randy Sainer, Livestock Systems Educator and Program Leader with Nebraska Extension as well. And if you have any questions today, we invite you to write those in the chat or the Q&A, and we will get to those during a Q&A period after their presentation. So Shannon, Matt, Randy, thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, with that, I'm going to attempt to start the PowerPoint. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and get this party started, I guess. So we're going to talk about, we called this the 25-26 replacement heifer cow forecast webinar, presentation, meeting, whatever you'd like to call it. So myself, Randy Sainer, and Dr. Matt Stockton.
Fun. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be so much fun. I was like, pulled this together. If you have questions as we move through this, please feel free to put those in the chat like Ryan stated. So I always think this is a really important thing to ask myself, quite frankly, before I do anything. Why does it matter? So some of the reasons, and Randy and Matt, I'm going to expect y'all to chime in as we go along, by the way. So
absolutely.
Why does heifer forecasting matter in terms of price, right? The break-even value of replacement animals is representative of what an actual operation should pay on average based on expected costs and revenues. We know that, these are just best guesses based on biological models, costs that we've come up with and pulled from all over the place, and prices that we think may or may not happen in the future. So again, everybody's situation is different. Where you are in the state or in the US or the world, right? Your prices are going to be different. These are just averages. So keep that in mind.
I would add to that why guess? Why do this?
Right.
Because okay, you're going to spend a lot of money or not
Yes.
a lot of money, depending on what, and you're saying, okay, so I'm going to spend this money. Am I going to get my money back? And you need to think about that, because you have a finite amount of money, unless of course you're somebody that has a lot of money. But so my point being is that's why break-even values are important to kind of consider and think about. Because if you think cattle prices are going to drop off next year really bad, you wouldn't be wanting to pay a lot. And if you think cattle prices are going to continue to stay high, then you would have a different attitude and be able to think, well, then I'll get my money back. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're doing a great job. You're doing good,
whatever. That works.
So, discovery of those replacement annual animal values is very complex, like I was stating earlier. And like Matt stated, it's really important to know your costs because we know with the cattle cycle, at some point, what goes up must come down. So, knowing our costs, knowing our break evens are really, really important. We're business people at the end of the day. I know we love the lifestyle. Look at Randy's picture, it tells you all of it. I was like, love the lifestyle. I was born and raised in it, enjoy it, but we're business people at the end of the day and we got to at least break even. So again, that I'm an economist also. So that's my point of view on a lot of things is that the cost of it matters. Long-term growth in terms of net worth and annual profitability depends on a positive difference between all our revenues and all our costs. So again, but do you all have anything else to add, Randy or Matt?
No, other than the fact is this is why there's risk involved in forecasting. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
know. And that's
No.
why we decided to do it a certain way. And Shannon's going to tell us what we did.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's really important. We know with producers, if you want to grow and continue to grow your operation, these are things you really got to
Yes.
consider. And we all have to consider that when we buy replacements, because I myself have bought some, and it is a thoughtful process, but we want those cows to pay at least break even so that they bring money into the operation. If they don't, if they lose us money, that is going to hurt us when we go to borrow money or when we go to grow or buy more land. All those things can have an effect on us.
The point being is you want more winners than losers because you're not going to always win, right, Randy?
Exactly, Matt. Because I know that I've had cows fall out early too. And so we all have that. But we try to find genetics that don't do that. And we'll see why in a minute.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, some of the information that's used in this forecast are things like revenue, so the value of all the animals, cull cows, wean calves, uh, 10 years of data, or I should say, 10 years into the future using FAPRI baseline predictions and annual cost factors, price changes using FAPRI as an index with 3 different Nebraska cost scenarios, which we'll go more into that a little later on. And then we have 3 different levels of cow life or longevity, as Randy likes to call it. So we have replacement rates of 28%, 20%, and 14%. And this is based off of data and information over the last few decades that Matt and Randy have gleaned because they're both very intelligent gentlemen. So it gives us a total of basically 9 different scenarios. And then we also include things like production, biological, and environmental information. So again, we have weaning rates ranging from 85 to 92%, and cow and calf simulated based on cows that are younger than 13 years. So when they hit that close to that 13 years, that's when, based on our biological model, they're moved out of that herd. And then also approximately 250-day weaning. And then we assume about a 1250 mature weight.
So at 4 years old
Go
or
for
6
it.
years old or whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's a typo there. I think that's actually 80. We went from, I think,
We went to
88.
98. I realized that.
Yeah, and 88. So those are both
I figured we
wrong.
would talk about that later. It's okay.
It's all right. I'm
We're
sorry.
good.
I just realized that, well, wrong numbers, but that's all right. But that's the range of the weaning rate. So cow had a calf, there's 88 to 98% chance that she's going to wean a calf.
And we picked the 1250 mature weight. I mean, we know people have bigger cows. We know people have smaller cows, and that can be adjusted. But that's what most people we see a lot. And in some cases, there's a lot bigger cows than that. So we can.
That's an average weight, right, Randy?
Average.
Exactly, it's average for the industry. Yep.
So yeah, it's also average for your herd. I mean, if you got 1,000 cows, I guarantee you got some that weigh 1,250, but I don't think you may even have some that weigh 1,500 pounds, but you also may have some that only weigh 900,000 pounds. So we're saying that on average, they're going to be 1,250 pounds. In fact, that's one of the things in the model that's kind of interesting because cow size of the individual animal selected is going to produce a different size calf.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So we kind of mentioned this earlier. We have 3 different annual cull rates. So we have 14, 20, and 28%. And like I was saying, that has to do kind of, again, that simulates basically like the longevity of the herd or how old the herd is on average. Go for
But
it,
you
Matt.
need to understand that why is that important? because if you have a 14% call rate, right? That means you're
Right.
going to replace only 14% of your, this is saying we're only going to replace 14% of the animals. Well, 28%, that's double. That's twice as, so you buy twice as many animals every year. These,
Yes.
we're assuming that this rate stays constant throughout the 10-year process, which
Yes.
Yeah. So Matt, you either buy them or you raise them. You could raise them too, right?
absolutely
It's the
Correct.
same thing.
still costs money though, right?
Exactly. Raising them, you need to look at your costs when you raise them because it may not be much difference than what we're saying if you buy them.
In fact, it really doesn't matter. What
No,
matters
it
is how
doesn't.
much does that cost you to raise them versus how much does it cost you to buy them.
Mhm.
And I
Exactly.
mean, you have to include all costs if you're raising them because you have you have an opportunity cost too, because now you didn't sell a cow or I mean a heifer as
Calf, yeah.
a fat cow. I mean as a wean calf, sorry.
Right. And they're pretty valuable right now, right? So
Yeah. So I
They
mean,
sure are.
difference.
I was like,
which is nice.
all
yeah.
right. So those are our rates. And that implies that if you're a 14% rate, that means your herd age is going to increase. The average cow age in your herd is going to increase. If you have a 28%, you're going to have a much younger overall herd because 28% of those cows every year are brand new if you're assuming you're buying heifer calves or
Yeah,
replace
you're having a faster turnover rate, basically.
Mhm.
yeah. And so you don't have as many older cows.
Right.
It's not possible
Nope.
mathematically anyway.
Correct.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Okay. I was just waiting to see if y'all were done.
I know.
So, so we broke it down into 3 different cost levels. So that's the cost it costs, I'm saying you, but I'm being like the royal you. Is that a thing? We're going with it. In
Sure.
terms
Yeah,
of
why not?
producer costs, right? So we broke down Nebraska cost levels into low, medium or mid, and then high.
Okay,
Yeah.
so but remember this isn't all the
Correct.
costs, right?
No, it
So
doesn't include like depreciation and some of those other economic costs.
in other words, this doesn't include the cost of replacing animals,
Yes, it's without replacement. So,
which is the depreciation and
which is
basically when you take depreciation. Because what do we mean by depreciation? The initial cost versus the recovery cost, if you will, or what they call the salvage value. And
Yeah.
so some cows are salvaged out at 2 years, 3 years, or 3 years or 4 years. Some cows are 13 years old. So they have a
right.
different depreciation rate. But
Yeah.
basically, so it's just replacement cost is basically accounts for depreciation.
But
And go ahead.
Matt, the program we use accounts for some of that in the program. Am I correct in saying that? It
Right.
accounts for some of the depreciation.
Yeah, these costs are everything without cow replacement value.
Okay.
In other
Yes.
words, this is, breeding costs. This is everything else.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, feed costs, land, whatever other costs, but it just doesn't count for a depreciation cost.
And if you look at the medium one, that's kind of what we use for central Nebraska
Yeah.
costs, which we got from producers, which we've
Yeah, and we compared it to the ag budget calculator. The livestock budget's available on cap.unl.edu. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And so if your costs are different than this, you're going to say, oh, well, which one's closest to mine? And that might be a way to apply some of the
Look at it.
results.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do y'all have anything else you want to add to this one? You're
I'm
okay?
good.
Okay. All right. So these are the 9 scenarios that I talked about a little bit earlier. Matt, do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
basically, at the 14% call rate, you could have a low cost producer, a medium cost producer, or a high cost producer, and
Mhm.
cost then becomes a factor of all these other things like feed costs. In other words, if you're paying a lot for pasture rent, and you're paying a lot for this, and you're paying a lot for that because of your situation, you may be in the high cost column, but you may be in the low cost column with a low call rate. But you could also then, on the other hand, be a 20% or a 28% call rate and still have the similar cost. And so what we've done is said, okay, so there's 9 possibility or 9 combinations that we're going to look at to try to give people a feel for how call rate or the turnover rate, longevity rate, as Randy says, and how the cost interact together to affect what you can pay for an animal.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is the actual cow calf cost calculator. It's an Excel workbook that's available online. So basically, this is the information that's needed in order to run something similar. Matt, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Actually, okay, look. You can get, I mean, people talk about budgets and they talk about you got to have a budget, you got to have this, and you know, that's a good thing. And I think they're right. And I think our Ag Econ department has the budget calculator and they're trying to hook that together with a total farm and a bunch of stuff. But what this does, it gives you an opportunity to say, look, maybe you don't know your exact cost. And so what you can do is you have a high and a low column where you can put in, okay, I think, you know, I could pay this to this, and you put that range in there. And then this automatically then takes and says, okay, what happens if this and what happens if that? And it does it 500 times. And then it gives you a output of where your costs could range from this to that based on the high and low that you put in there for all of these values. And basically, it's kind of simple because you can just sit down and just put high, low values in there, and it'll automatically give you an average or the average, which we call mean there, and it give you an outcome. And it has two columns that shows you what your average cost would be, expectation, and then what your you know, using the distribution would be. And so it's not that hard. It's simple. There's simple things you can put in there. You can use it for a budget. You know, if you really have a hard time with budgets, it's not hard to do. And that basically, we did 3 different ones of these to come up with those other costs.
Right.
Because we
we did some scenario comparison kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
also came up with a standard deviation. In other words, how much those costs could vary based on these high, low numbers that we put in there. That's what it is. I suggest if you're interested in it, you look at it, because a lot of people, you know, oh, it's so hard to calculate how much might cost. Well, if you just fill out each one of these little squares, you know, like, okay, what's my expected interest rate? Well, that's hard. You know, well, basically I'm getting 6%. Well, it could be as high as 7, maybe as low as 5, or maybe it is 7. Well, then you put in the high of 7.1 and the low of 6.9, and then it's always going to be around 7%. So, I mean, you know, cows in the herd, you know, and how many cows do you have and how many do you sell every year? And all those things will give you replacement rates. It'll calculate all these kinds of things and go through that whole process. And if you go down later in the sheet, you'll also find that it has a calving rate and a weaning rate. And it has also, you put your expected price range in there, how much you expect to get. And so it'll give you an idea how much profit you might have, or what the probability is of making a profit. So when you run the model, it'll say, oh yeah, by the way, you know, you've got a 50% chance of losing money, or you got a 50% chance of making money. And it does that, but I don't want to get too far off the track.
So Matt, Brian put it in the chat. So if people are interested, they can link to the chat there. The website is in there.
Good. Sorry, I didn't mean to get carried away.
That's
No,
fine.
you're fine.
Okay.
So, yeah. Are you guys okay with me moving on
Yeah,
to the
next
next?
slide,
Okay,
please.
that's, I just wanted to make sure. So this is
Randy's going to talk about this after you talk about this.
okay. I was like,
Yeah,
so
right.
this is just basically the distribution based on the simulation of what the low cost range is. Randy, correct me if I'm wrong. Matt also. So our average was $1,033 dollars and 81 cents, and then the standard deviation, that means within what, 99% is within $13.34 either way.
No. You have to
Oh.
have 4 standard deviations,
4
2 on each
standard
side,
deviations,
and then you
sorry.
get 90%. And
Thank you, Matt.
You don't really want to get into that, okay? Really,
No,
you
that's
don't.
fine. That's fine. So this is basically our range, though. So we've got a little under $1,000 all the way up to, what is that? Almost 1,100 kind of is our range, with our average being 1,033. So.
And if you want to put it in similar forms rather than talk about a distribution, Randy, you got a way of putting that. Why don't you tell them what how you understand it?
Yeah.
I'm yeah, right. So basically we have a range, right, of cost. And so but the average is going to be there because some years it's going to be higher, some years are going to be lower. Same way with producers. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. Costs are going to be lower or higher, but the average is going to be the 1,033. And so we know that sometimes it's going to be higher and lower, but that's a distribution, and basically that's the range of cost.
It's like rolling the dice, guys. It's
Yep.
Just think of it, when you roll a dice, you don't, on average, you're going to maybe get, 3 or 3.5. Well, there's no 3.5 on a dice, right? But you don't understand what I'm saying, whatever that average is. But the point is,
Mhm.
this is like rolling the dice. I rolled the dice. Oh, all the things were cheap this year. Everything worked out perfect. I got the $9, $995 or $1,000, a little less. Oh no, things went bad. Oh my gosh, it cost me $1,100. That's based on those numbers you put in that spreadsheet, the high, the low. So if you got all high numbers and all things went bad, you basically get this high number. If you got all good numbers and everything is a low price, you got the bottom number. And then somewhere in between, you have all this variation of all these prices and all this cost and all this stuff. And basically, so these are chances of or outcomes that you might get based on the information you put in the sheet. So it's
Right.
probable outcomes that you might get. So, but if you average them all together, then you get the red line.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so these are our mid costs or medium cost probabilities basically from those outcomes. So our average here was 1266.28.
And then go to the next one
Okay.
and that one, see, they're about $200, a little bit less than $200 higher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this
each
is your
time.
high cost one here, so you
So,
Yeah.
so Randy, how would you describe a high cost operation? What would that mean?
Um, well, you might have high interest, you may be a newer producer. The other thing is you're be purchasing your rental rates may be higher on your grass. It could be that you're having to spend more on feed because it's a drought. All those things can affect your price, but mainly it's higher dollars for your feed and your range, and it could even be higher dollars for your bulls and your replacements.
And you may have more vet's expense. Maybe you use the vet more. Maybe
Or you
there's
might,
things.
yeah, you might have had a disease issue come through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
High
so
cost
so
producer.
you have the higher value, right? So
Yeah.
it's not a bad or good thing. It's just a thing. In other words, if if you figure out your cost, you go, this is what I'm paying, then you got an idea that well, maybe I'm in the higher range, because these things are also based on rental rates of ground that we have from the real estate report, and
Right.
this one is on the higher third. In other words, those that were recorded that this is I am actually paying a higher
Paying the high.
price for my pasture and stuff. That's where this one is coming from. Whereas
Yeah,
the
and
other
this,
one comes from the lower third and then the middle third.
right, right. And we kind of base this off of the Sandhills area rental rates, basically.
If you know your statistical district, which I have no idea if you even know what that
It's
is,
north,
it's the
north.
north, right, Randy?
Yep.
Yeah. I believe that's the one we picked for this one this year.
We did.
Yeah.
It's number 2 on the
Because
list.
we have a lot of cows in the Sandhills. That's why we did it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Ready?
Yep.
absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to make
People are
sure.
probably waiting to get to the good stuff.
They're like, come on.
Get over this crap. We don't want to listen to all this stuff, but you got to kind of know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are what we're saying here is that okay, Randy and Shannon got together and said, I don't like fat breed. And so they decided that no,
Okay, I
that's
don't
not.
think we went that far and said that. I was like,
Okay,
Randy, we've got to defend
I made
ourselves.
that up. I made that up.
We
Sorry.
just did a guess.
And so
Yeah.
they did what they thought is a possibility. What they thought
Yes.
felt maybe was a possibility. And so they had a 10-year change in prices and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did one, and which was different than theirs. And then we did another one, and those are the other 3 scenarios, because what the scenario we're going to talk about today is only FAPRI's forecast.
Yes.
And then we forecast, but look, you might have a different forecast yourself. Like you say, well, look, I don't agree that. I think that the market's going to be fairly constant. It's not going to vary so much. Well, that's fine. It's going to stay fairly high. Oh, I'm going to think it's going to drop off and then go
Mhm.
low for a couple of years, but then start coming back. I mean,
Mhm.
whatever you think, you have a different in your head. You could say, okay, what's going to happen in the next 10 years? And that's what we did. So we had 4 different scenarios that
Mhm.
project prices differently. We have a picture of that, Shannon. Is that what's next?
Yes. We're
There you
getting to
go.
that. So
Oh, so Randy's going to tell us all about this, right, Randy? And then Shannon's going to tell us what she thinks, and then we'll
sure.
see how it comes
So
out.
if you think about FAPRI, that's a policy research institute out at University of Missouri, and they have sample farms across the United States, And so that's what they use for their costs in their scenario. And again, it's their best guess, right, of what's going to happen.
And that's the black line, right, Randy?
Yes, it is the black line, which is completely different than Shannon's and I or even Matt's. So the low ball one would be if we had like a black swan scenario where prices stayed really low. And that's the kind of the bluish, I don't know what you
Light
call it.
blue.
Light
I'm gonna
blue,
call it the
maybe.
light blue
Okay.
color.
Aquamarine.
You're pointing at it, so
Yeah,
that's
I'm trying to point at it with the
right.
arrow.
And
I don't know
so,
if it's coming
and then
across.
Shannon and I did the red one. So we thought, prices are going to go up and then they're going to come down. Ours did not go as high as Matt's, which
No.
I'm hoping Matt's right because I own cattle, right? So we're going to hope.
Okay, well,
Matt is more like a 10-year cycle.
Yeah.
So they're down and then they come back up. But Fabry doesn't show that. Fabry's more like what we did, Shannon. So
Yeah.
10 years from now, you're going to have worse prices. Well, and the reason I put mine the way I did is that actually year 2 is actually this year.
Correct.
right.
Right. So, and I think we're at a peak. And what I'm
Mhm.
saying is it's going to go down. Randy and them also feel that's a peak.
We did
Okay.
too, but our slope's much quicker than yours does is part of it. So
Yeah, it kind of descends fast, but it doesn't go down as far.
no, it doesn't. Yeah.
And then it
Some of
doesn't
us
rebound as well
Yeah.
either. So, that's just,
Correct.
and so that's a difference of opinion, right?
Yes.
And so if
absolutely.
I'm an operator and I say, well, this is what I think is going to happen, then that's the scenario I would use in this model. But today's model, we use the black line.
Yes, the black line. And so we're all gonna be different. And we don't know what price they're gonna do. And some of us remember back in 2014, 15. And Shannon and I remember that a lot. That's why ours probably goes down a little further, but it didn't go down as far. So just a thought. But you can see Fabry's goes down quite a bit too, right? And it's not recovering as fast as what some of our
In fact, it doesn't recover at all.
No. That's kind of a scary thought, but it could happen.
Yes. And they have macroeconomic models that predict this too as well. There's some other things.
Right.
And they probably consider they probably have growth of the herds in there, and there's a bunch of other factors in their models that they're trying to forecast all these things.
Right.
Shannon, did you have anything? And of course, utility cow prices. What's the problem with this one, Randy, especially if Argentina?
Well, if we just bring in more meat, that's going to lower prices some. Probably a lot of that will be ground beef, right? Because we always need more hamburger beef. And right now we get a lot of it from Australia. That may change who we get it from. But it could lower prices and change that curve a little faster.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Next slide.
Okay. So these are the Fabry price scenario results that Matt was talking about. Matt, did you want to add something?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry I said anything. I grunted or something. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
That y'all are, this is my favorite table, I think. So.
Oh, we even got the right.
Yeah, we have the right weaning rate averages on this one. It's the 88 to 98%. So the average of that in the middle is going to be 93%. So yeah.
Okay, so to explain this chart. So we've already talked about this. We got the call rates on the side, 14, 20, and 28%. That's those. So for each of those levels, and if you follow those rows over, then it talks about the cost. We have the low cost, and then we have the green number that shows what that is. Then we have the mid cost with its number and the high cost. So let's start at the bottom. If we have a high call rate, 28%,
at a low cost,
and then we have a high cost, right? So we're paying. It's costing us $14.22 per cow. And I didn't say per calf because now this is on a per cow basis. Because per calf, it depends on the number of calves, and that's why the weight rates becomes really important. You don't have a calf, you can't sell it, so the revenue is not going to show up. So it's actually going to increase the cost per calf, which this is not in cost per calf. The cost, they're in cost per cow. It gets translated into the model into that number, by the way. All right, so at that particular cost and call rate, we can afford, given this FAPRI information, $1,680.53 per cow.
Yep.
And at that price, we will break even. In other words, if we pay that for each cow, on average, we're going to break even.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty low cost. That's a pretty low cost heifer, which is going to be hard to find.
Yeah, I don't know that
So,
you
you
could find
know,
one for 1680 right now.
I
No.
don't think you can find
Ever.
unless you
If
find
we-
an old cow somewhere that's 900 years. No, sorry, whatever.
We figured 4,000 basically is what we started with, and then we
Yeah.
put these in, and you can see that's what we thought the prices probably are going to run this year.
Yeah.
And you can see that our break even is a little lower than 4,000.
Okay, even our best break even, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
The low cost, low call rate.
Which, if we want to do that one next, let's talk about that one.
Okay.
So now on the opposite end of the table is this, okay, I got a low call rate, 14%, which historically is low. I don't know if you guys realize that, but we did UNL did a survey of beef producers, and the average call rate at the time, and this is probably 15 years ago, was about 21%. Okay, so that's why we have 20% set in the middle there as the call rate. So at 14% call rate consistently, that means your cows on average are lasting longer in the herd than what I would think of as on average should happen. So this is a low call herd. Now I don't know if you believe me on that, and I don't know what your herd does, and I'm not gonna. If you tell me you have a 10% call rate, I'm gonna say fine, but mathematically that's impossible to do every year because that means you're gonna have 400 older cows somewhere, out of a herd of 400, because mathematically you can't really do lower than a certain number over a period of time. Now you may have a lower one year and then a higher one to make up for it another year. So we're saying this is like the average, and 14%
Again, this is on average throughout the life of the herd.
14% is getting pretty close to about where you can actually feasibly do that and expect the herd to have some sort of aggregation that looks kind of normal.
Well, or maintain your herd, right?
Right.
Basically.
Well, and you can have a group of older cows,
Right.
but then what I'm saying is then you have another group that's smaller, and there's all kinds of things that happen. You can do all that, but I'm just saying 14% seems about the minimum if you're going to have consistently less cows every year of each age.
Right.
Okay, but look, we only get a break even of almost $3,700, $3,738. So that means we're saying you're paying 4,000 if you're going to pay 4,000, and this is what you can break even at 14% with your low cost. That means you either need to have a lower cost than that to pay the 4,000 and break even, or you need to have a lower call rate, or you're not going to break even on this particular year if you're paying 4,000, probably on average. Doesn't mean you're doing bad things, because sometimes you don't always break even, and we know that, but hopefully you break even more or make money more than you don't. Otherwise you go out of business. So that's $3,738.92. And you'll notice that as the call rate increases, what happens? Your ability to pay for the cow goes down. So it's $28.59 for the higher call rate.
Yeah, that's almost $1,000 difference. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's huge difference.
Yeah.
So finding the right genetics that will be longer, that last longer, is a pretty important issue. And so if you find those and you're buying them, you can pay a little bit more, it says here, right? You can pay a little bit more for better genetics that's going to last longer.
Yeah, you'd have to kind of know how much you're paying versus how much you're lasting longer and how much that's going to add to the last.
Right.
And that is almost an impossible thing
Right.
to know. Okay, so I think genetics is part of it, but the other thing too, I bet you that's a big part of it is management. How do you manage those cows?
Yeah.
In other words, if you're always stressing them, I don't know if that makes them live longer or shorter. I mean, if you're managing them, yeah, you stress them, but you don't stress them to the point that it causes them to drop out of the herd quicker. So in other words, let me give you an example. I know enough about nutrition and animals. I've taken a few nutrition classes, do a few things with cows. So if you take an animal and stress it at the wrong time, like during her breeding, she's not going to get pregnant. If she doesn't get pregnant, guess what? Her longevity just got
Mm-hmm.
taken off.
Good.
So it may be that you can stress her at certain times of her of the season, or other times of the season you may not be wanting to do that. Also, her
So-
age may be something like, for example, heifers may require more nutrition because they're continuing to grow. So supplementation of heifers might be something you do to try to increase longevity and keep costs under control by not supplementing everybody or all of them at the same time. And you
So-
know, those are the
Yeah.
kinds of things you need to be thinking about when you're talking about costs, right, Randy?
Environment and management's really important in this, and I think it can really make a difference here in the longevity of the cows is how you manage them, and finding the right combination for you and the cows that work in your system are really, really important.
Right.
And like you said, Matt, it's stressing them too much at certain times is going to have a bigger fallout rate, which is going to cost you money. And so doing nutrition at the right times is really, really important in the cow calf industry.
Right, for longevity, and of course also the you know, because the health of the cow at the time of breeding and the way she cycles and all those things are important things. But
Weight
if
of
it
the
costs
calf
you,
can also make a difference too by environment and management. So
so
that's another one you don't think about.
right, so let's take this. Okay, so if I have a 14% call rate, but my costs are at $1,400, you see what it does to the value of the replacements?
Yeah, about half
So
of
if
what you could pay for
you
the
got
other,
you
yeah.
got to be watching two things at the same time. Okay, how do I get optimal longevity, but also get costs down? I mean, if you can do that, that's the ideal. Okay, so that's they're kind of related in that sense. What's the next slide?
This one.
Oh, this one's pretty.
is
Randy likes
Randy's,
this
yeah.
one.
I like ones you can look at. And you
Mhm.
can see the difference, big differences, right? In all those in cost as well as culling rate. So just a good visual way to look at it.
Mhm.
So call rate increases, value of the cow decreases.
Yes.
Cost increases, value of the break-even value of the cow also decreases.
Mhm.
And that's what the green, it's really severe. If you got a really high cost,
Yeah, man.
you oh wow, you can pay up to $1,830 almost, and down to 1,600. That means you got like a $100 and what, $110, $20 price range or some ridiculous. I mean, that's the difference of, so it doesn't, so it really
Mhm.
affects it. Whereas, in fact, we're going to get that in the next slide, aren't we?
Yeah. I was gonna say you're headed in the right direction.
Well, then I'll be quiet. There you go.
No, you're doing great.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about. Okay, so what is the, so if I don't have 14%, I do 15%, or I think my herd's 16%. I do a really good job. Well, how do I know what that effect that's going to have? Well, we did some calculations here. In
Yep.
fact, we're going to write a paper that's going to have a table where you can actually look up different costs and different call rates, so you can say, oh, okay, that's about where what cow
Where
value
you're at.
is. In fact,
Yeah.
that paper should be, like I said, coming out Friday or beginning of next week.
I would say next week rather than Friday. Yeah.
Oh, we have a risk
We still have
adverse
to- yeah.
person over here. Okay, so the cost, in other words, let's say you have you're a low cost producer.
Okay.
All right. And what we're saying is, okay, at the low cost producer, and let's say you're going from 14 to 20, let's say you're at 20%
Mhm.
call rate. You say, well, what's it worth to me in cow value, break even value, to have it to drop that 1%?
Yeah.
Well,
19, right?
beg your pardon?
From 20 to 19.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect, Randy. In fact, if you want to finish the statement, you can.
That's $68.56. That's a lot of money. Just
Per
one
head.
percentage difference. That's a pretty big deal for me.
Yeah.
Looking
Right.
at a
Again-
calf producer.
So if you gained, let's say you're at 20% and you get yourself down to 17%,
Right.
which is that would be 3 times 7. That's about $200.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of
You
money.
get 200. You could pay $200 more for basically a replacement. Okay.
Yeah. Now that's
So-
assuming you're a low cost producer. If you're a high cost producer, it's $10. So
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
You just
Sorry to point
ruined
that one out.
everything, Shannon. I can't
Sorry.
believe you did. No.
Like,
it's
somebody had to
not-
say it.
Yeah, it's just not very much, right? It's just not very much because you're already so high.
Yeah.
Let's
And
not
again,
make as
sometimes you
much
don't have a
difference.
choice in that because
Right.
your rental rates or your land note or what have you. Yeah.
Right.
So what we're saying here is that call rates, but again, why is that so? Well, remember, you can only pay $1,800.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if you go down between 18 and 20, I mean, you're only gaining like one's 1,800, the other one's 1,800 and some. I mean, oh
Mm-hmm.
wow, I gained all. So that's why you only get $3.43 for every 1% change. So in other words, there's not a lot of gain if you're at a high cost.
Yeah.
What it begins to tell you is that high cost is not as impactful for the changes. Whereas
Right.
the low cost, man, you get a lot of bang for your buck
Yeah.
for call rates if you can be low. So it means that, maybe there's in the middle somewhere, maybe paying a little to gain a lot
Right.
is something that you should be thinking about.
So the other thing, man, if you're a high risk or a high replacement rate, high cost, you better be doing some risk management because if you're not, you could lose your operation really fast. So it's going to be very, very important at that level that you really have a lot of risk management in place, like price of your calves, LRP, those kind of things, because you can't afford. And the other challenge is you can't really afford those heifers for $1,600 either. So
Well, yeah, that's all you can pay, and if that's all you can pay, you're not going to be able to find heifers, and so you're going to pay more than that. And if you don't change your cost structure, basically you're going to lose enough money. And if you do that every year, you're going to be out of business in a short order.
Right,
Is what
right.
it really says.
Yep.
So that's how it kind of. I think that's what you're trying to say, Randy.
Yep, it is. It is.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, good job, by the way, both of you doing a good job. So in the middle, you see, you get about $35, whereas you're getting
Mhm.
about 68 to 58. So there's a $10 range for the low cost producer in both call rates. Now, if you gain a call rate, in other words, your call rate increases, that means you can pay less for an animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's say you increase from 14 to 20, that means, that's what, 6 or 8. So yeah, six times 7, that's a lot of money,
That's a lot of money.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at 70, let's just round it up to
So 420,
$70.
basically, let's round up. Make
Yeah,
life
okay.
easier.
So that's 400. That's 400 basically, or just let's just say $400.
All
Because the
right.
$2, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
So let's say that that's $200. That means you lose $200 that you can pay for replacements. Or if you pay whatever you did for replacements, the 4,000, instead of losing $300, you're now losing $500
Mm-hmm.
per head. You see, and that's that's a $200 gain and loss. That's not what you want. That's not the direction you want to go. But that's it's pretty much the way it works. And so
Mm-hmm.
you look at this and you begin to realize, oh, okay, so call rate and cost are related, and also so that's where having low cost is great, but being low cost and low replacement is even better.
Right. You have the chance for higher gains, I guess is the way I would look at it.
Absolutely.
But
Do we have
yeah,
another slide?
we sure do. We have several slides.
Oh, okay.
So this is the change in the break-even value due to a dollar change in terms of your cost. So sort of flipping the previous one on its head in a way. But
Okay. Go ahead
yeah.
and explain it if you want.
Oh, you're doing such a good job, Matt. I was like, oh, so basically, if you're going from, let's say, the low to the mid cost, or you're going from mid to low cost, let's make it a positive thing instead of a bad thing, and you're paying more in cost. You're paying less now. You went from let's say, a mid cost producer to a low cost producer. And let's say I'm going to choose the 20% because that's kind of average for this area, right?
Mhm.
Replacement rate, we gained $3.89 for every dollar that we changed that. So let's say we went from, what was it, like 12 to
1266.
1,000?
Yeah.
That's a lot, right? Because
Well,
that's a huge
that's
multiplier effect.
$200 times almost $4.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
let's
I
say
mean, 200.
$700, make life easy.
Yeah,
So,
that's fine.
but yeah,
So basically the cost impact declines as your replacement rate increases. So
Yeah.
the higher your replacement rate, the less effect each dollar savings has. Which makes, that makes
Makes
sense, right,
sense.
Randy? I mean, if you got a high
Yeah.
replacement rate, that's you're losing
Younger
money at the
herd.
replacements, not because of, so the dollar impact, that's gonna stay, that high cost is gonna remain. But you save money in other ways in pasture or whatever other things you're paying
But,
for.
but there's just not as much impact when you're the high
Right, right.
cost. And
But when you're a low cost producer and you got good replacement rate, every dollar you can reduce after that without really impacting the
that's a
replacement rate.
pretty good return. $1 for 3,
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty good return, right?
right. That's
For
not bad.
every
So
dollar
even
reduction, you get $3 increase. I'd take that return.
yeah, so you can still get some gains even at the high replacement rate, which is a good idea because then it means you can pay more for those cows. It helps you from your $1,600 to whatever. So it makes a big difference. So these
Yeah.
return rates, but obviously it seems like the highest gains you get is if you're in the middle to high cost and you're
Mhm.
at that low replacement rate, you can get for every dollar you decrease, you're going to get that $5 return,
Back.
basically that you can spend on a cow.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's pretty considerable for, $5.
Yeah,
That's a pretty good
absolutely.
return.
So
Mhm.
that's another way of looking at it. So we've taken these values that we're talking about here and created a table, and it'll be in the upcoming publication. It'll show you, you can actually just say, okay, well, this is my cost, whatever that is, and then this is my replacement rate, which will be between 14 and 28 somewhere, and your
Right.
costs will be between what that 1033 to 1466 or whatever it is, or 22, sorry, and whatever it is, and somewhere in there for every dollar change, you say, oh, my cost is about this, and my replacement rate this, and and you'll come together, and that'll give you an approximation, giving FAPRI information of what you should be able to break even at in paying for animals. It gives you an idea of what's going on. Is basically what it does. Next slide, I would think.
Yep. Okay.
This one Randy likes a lot.
I do. So what's the chance of paying off the cost of $4,000 heifer?
Mhm.
And if you're a low cost producer, it's only 52%, right? Because break even was 37 somewhere in there. So, but look at what happens to medium and high at the higher calling rate. This is not a very good chance. So maybe you shouldn't be paying 4,000 for those heifers because it's probably not going to benefit you at all, right? The chance of really making any money on those is going to be low. So you might want to buy some stockers and do some stocker raising. That's a whole nother thing, but
Yeah.
the cow thing, buying heifers there is just there's not any chance of return. So why would you do it? Does that make sense?
Right.
Versus the low
Mhm.
and the call, you still only have 52% at 4,000.
Right.
And
And
so
that's your base case scenario where you're only buying 14% of the animals. Okay.
right.
Now, when you're buying 28% of them, so in other words, you buy 1,000 animals, and if you got a 28% call rate, that means 28% of what you just bought, if next year are going to be gone.
Right.
Because or not only bought, but the ones that are also in your herd and whatever. But that means you got a pretty good turnover rate, and so 28% of the animals in your herd are going to be different every year. And
Yeah.
because of that, and because you're selling them and buying them back, only 17.9% of them are actually going to that you bought.
Right.
Only 17% of them are going to actually, because what this represents is there's 1,000 animals that are drawn. And
Mhm.
each one has a random lifestyle based on USDA probability of death, and that accumulates every year. It's 2% every year because cows have about a 2% death rate, according to USDA, and we put that in as 2%. So basically, at a 2% death rate, and all the things that happen to a cow, and all these things that we're talking about, you're saying only 17% of them actually showed making more than you paid for them, which is the $4,000.
Right.
So that at the 28% call rate, that means your call rate, your calling procedure is costing you money because you're selling cows at a cheaper price. You're losing money on that depreciation, if you will. Whereas at the 14%, you're losing less on depreciation. So your cows are actually then making the more money. That's kind of where it's coming from. And then when you get to the higher cost, you're really in bad trouble. And that's why, in fact, if you look at it, we said that at the lowest cost, it was $1,680, something like that, dollars that you could afford to pay. So you're getting back 16, on average 1680. Now, if I got it, I looked it up in the thing, and I think the highest, value you get because of the high call rate and everything else is not a lot of money. So you're losing a tremendous amount of money. If you're paying $4,000 on average, and then on average, you get only $1,680 return, because everything happens that, the way Fabry says it's going to, basically you're losing $2,320 for every cow you buy. I don't know how many people can take a loss like that for very long. Now you can do it for a year or so. I mean, because you're not buying your whole herd, you're only buying 28% of it.
A portion, yeah.
And so Matt, we know that some years cows may not be as profitable as other years, and but it's the long term, right? So if you have too many bad years where you're not getting any return, it's gonna be hard to pay your bills. But maybe one bad year you might be okay.
Right.
Right.
So in other words, buying a $4,000 heifer may be okay in some cases because you can afford to cover the loss eventually.
Exactly.
Is what we're saying. But that's if you're not, and what is that? And guess what? The higher your cost is, the worse it is for you to do that, because you're not going to get the return, because you got to I got to maintain all the cows in the herd, and it's costing me $1,400 rather than $1,000. I mean, I'm just approximating.
Well, especially on the high cost ones and high calling rate, that really doesn't make any sense at all, because even if it's 1 year, you're going to lose an awful lot.
Right. So what we're saying is, and so now this is where raising your heifers might come in. So let's say, well, I can raise my heifers for $3,000. Well, yeah, obviously that makes things better for you, because you're not going to lose
Right.
you're not going to lose the $4,000 and get back only $1,700 worth of value. You're going to get $1,700 worth of value back because of your cost structure and because of your call rate. And so you're gonna end up losing less money. So losing less money is better than losing more money. Not ideal, okay? Not saying you want to do that, but minimizing loss is better than not minimizing loss. So in this case, raising animals, could be of benefit. Doesn't mean you're going to stay in business if you keep doing it. If you continually every year are paying more for your animals than you can afford to pay, eventually it's going to catch up to you, because you got to make money on some of them, otherwise you're not going to stay in business.
Yeah.
So that's the take home story for that. And so we're just trying to tell you, look, this is the information we've created based on Fabry. Means Fabry says certain things are going to happen. If those things happen and you're paying this much money, this is your expected outcome for that animal, given certain cost structures, given certain call rates. And so everybody has a different call rate, and everybody has a different cost, and everybody has different opportunities. Plus, the fact we're assuming that your cost rate is simply going to escalate at the rate at which Fabry said. What happens if you're at a point where, my costs this year are going to be high, but I've got it worked out in some things, and I'm going to be able to reduce my costs? Well, then it's going to be a different outcome. It's going to be better for you. The more you can reduce your costs and keep your productivity the same, the better it's going to be, and the more you can pay for an animal, the more the break-even value is, or the less money you will lose if you pay too much for them, or the more money you'll make if you pay the right price for them. So that's kind of the take home.
No, I agree. Good job explaining this, y'all. So is
Yeah.
there anything else y'all want to add to this one before we move on to the next?
No,
Okay.
we should be done anyway.
Yes. So this is the
Do we have
why
any
is this
questions?
important. Yeah.
These are, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine, Matt.
I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, you're okay. So
It's kind
these
of
are
what you think and believe will affect your decisions, right,
mhm.
Shannon? Because in other words, each person has to make this decision. Well, you can't make it based on somebody else's thoughts, because all you would do that is if it turns out that they're wrong, you can just blame them, but it doesn't change what happens.
So Matt, here's another issue. Making no decision is not that is the worst kind of decision.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I have people that do that. Make the decision and then stand by it. It may be wrong, but you need to learn from it. But making no decision is not a good answer.
So if I decide to go out and buy heifers at 4,000, and because I believe that the prices are going to stay the same for a while, next, let's say 2 or 3 years, that may not be a bad decision. But if I'm wrong and they go down, is going to cost me. So that's what you have to figure out. Okay, so this is what I believe is going to happen. And then the question, how confident am I this is going to happen?
And what kind of risk are you,
Yeah, how much are you willing to gamble?
Because I know my dad personally, I have a personal thing on this. He bought a semi-load of heifers and it almost cost him the ranch one year when they were at their high. So
Right.
Ian, you want to really be careful with this because we've talked about this already, but I have personal experience and he really regretted ever buying those heifers because it almost cost us our ranch.
Yeah, putting all your eggs in one basket situation kind of deal.
So
Right.
you want to be careful.
Yeah.
If you believe prices are going to head down and they're going to head down fast, you should be staying away from buying animals. If you believe that prices are going to remain constant and go up, you shouldn't have a problem paying the prices we're
Right.
talking about.
Right.
Okay.
And,
so
and
that's kind of what we're saying. And it's all what you believe.
Yeah, he bought more than replacement. He increased his herd, and that was probably not the best time to do that.
So this may not be a time for growth at that speed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's another thing.
Now, if you got a neighbor that raises heifers for you and you're only paying $2,000 a piece, hey man, this may be the time to let it all go and get a bunch more than what you have. I mean, like I said, it depends on what you believe and what is going to happen, because it's really crucial to understand the relationship between prices falling and cost escalating at the same time. That's a price cost squeeze, and that's a bad thing. So anyway, I should be quitting talking here. Ryan's on now, and is there any questions, Ryan?
Hey, thank you guys. No questions so far, other than I have one. If we could just clarify, you mentioned it a couple of times, but just for people who might be looking for this information and expanding on it in a written format. Again, you're working on an article that will come out with a lot of this information in the next probably week or so. So we will get that to everybody who registered for this via email for sure.
Okay, for sure.
Okay, one question here for you guys that just came in. How would marketing a cut of younger cows to capitalize on appreciation from heifer calf to bred, 3, 4, 5-year-old affect the BV, managing annual depreciation cost? Is this a way to offset some risk in the feeder cattle or feeder calf market? That's kind of long. If I stumbled over it, you can.
No, I think I understand the question though. Randy, you want to take a crack, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, you can take a crack after I'm done if I miss something. Okay, so look, what you're saying is, okay, I bought these animals at a low price. Now I can sell them at a high price. So you do that. That's great, as long as you're not having to replace those cows now and buy them at a higher price. So in other words, if you're going to do feeder calves and you got contracts and you're going to do something else and pay for the grass, or have the grass pay for something else, and you're going to use the grass, then it may not be a bad idea. But it's not a good idea if you think you're going to, I'm going to sell them and then buy more cows, because all you're doing is yeah, you made a few bucks on that transaction, but now you got to go out and replace those cows at a high price. So it's kind of like, selling your home for lots of money because you only paid a little bit for it, but now you got to go live somewhere. So if that's the situation, that may not be a very good idea. But it could be a good idea if you can replace that income without having to replace the cows, and you can take that profit and plow it back into something, and then wait for cows to drop in price, and then take that money and invest it in cows. Now,
So my thought, Matt, would be if you did sell them, you could rent your land. That would be an option if you can find somebody to rent it. But remember, when numbers are down, there might be more land, but there's always somebody looking for rent. That would be one way. You may not make as much as you would with your cows, but you still are getting income from that land. The other option would be you could buy yearlings, but again, you're buying them at a high price, right?
but
And
you're
then,
at lower risk because you got a shorter period of time that they
right,
have to pay
and
for
then
themselves.
and then sell them, and then wait, and then maybe 2 or 3 years when prices get down, you can buy those cows back. I think that's a great option right now because of the prices.
But I would be careful on that option, because if prices are starting to go down, when are they going to reach their bottom? Because whenever you buy those cows, you want to buy those
True.
cows at the lowest possible price and have them appreciate the next year, not lose more value.
Right, right. And we know that it's probably going to go down in stages, right? So it might be several years before they start coming back, if they follow your little scenario that you put down.
People have been looking for years how to predict the cycle so that they could buy cows at the low price
Pretty
and
hard.
sell them at the high price. That's a common, I have seen economic literature after economic literature, people trying to build a model, trying to figure out how to do that and predict when that's going to happen. And the problem is, I have yet to see anyone do it and consistently and be able to predict it accurately enough to do that. So not a bad
yeah,
idea, but be careful.
we have a question. What discount rate was used to get PV of the replacements?
Oh, yeah, I think we used about 6 to 8%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a range.
So around
was 6 to
7
8%.
basic average, basically.
Yeah.
Does that help, hopefully?
The model is it's got a lot of, well, Shannon can vouch for me. It's got a lot of stuff in it, because basically you have a biological portion of the model that simulates the herd. Then you also have the, the replacement and how and each cow is, and we have the gender of the calf. There's a price slide in there for the size of the calf. There's a gender difference in prices.
Yes.
And so some, all that's in there, and that's the biological part. And then you also then have the economics, which has to do with cost escalation and de-escalation, depending on what FAPRI says. And then, of course, that's for 10 years in the future, which, good guess is, our guess is, that's why we use FAPRI. They made a guess, and we say, okay, then we'll use that to do it.
Right. I think we're really running out of time. If there's any other questions, I think we probably are finished as far as we know. So, Ryan, if you want to take it away and.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Brock and Stan. Great questions. And thank you to Shannon Sand, Randy Sainer, and Dr. Matt Stockton for the presentation today. You can find this recording up later this afternoon on the Center for Agricultural Profitability's website at cap.unl.edu/webinars. And when you leave today, you'll be presented with a very quick survey when you close your Zoom window. If you don't mind just taking 30 seconds to complete that, that really helps us out with some feedback for this presentation and ideas for other topics you would like to see covered in webinar. So thank you everybody for attending today. And again, thanks to all of our panelists, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon.
So do I.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ryan.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Bye.